The billionaire's cruel reaction to the black janitor singing in German sparks a shocking revenge. Victor Hargrove's shoes clicked sharply against the marble floor of his glittering penthouse. He was done with the endless meetings, the sunk hours in stale conference rooms, the suffocating pressure. His face, tight and drawn, was the mask of a man who had swallowed a lifetime's worth of stress all at once. The city lights spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, but Victor didn't see them. Not yet. Then, from the far corner of the vast, modern space came a sound, soft but impossible to ignore. A voice, beautiful, clear, singing in perfect German. It wasn't the usual hum of an elevator or the clatter of dishes. This was something else, something alive. Victor's eyes narrowed. Curiosity prickled beneath his exhaustion. He followed the voice, weaving through his luxurious living room until he spotted her. Francesca. The janitor he barely noticed before. Dark skin glowing under the dim chandelier, her lips moving like a secret only she knew how to tell. She was kneeling, a mop in one hand, but the other was lost to the music swirling around her, a haunting aria that filled every corner of the penthouse. For a moment, Victor felt something stir, a flicker of admiration maybe, but it vanished quickly. With a sharp laugh that cut through the melody, he pulled himself together and snapped, "Save the opera for somewhere that matters, Francesca. Dreaming like that won't get you anywhere." The words hit her like a slap. Her eyes shot up, wide and uncomprehending. The flush of humiliation surged through her chest, squeezing tight like a fist. She swallowed hard, heart hammering, hands trembling. The room felt colder now. Colder, lonelier. Victor turned away, already dismissing the moment as trivial. But Francesca's mind was anything but. His cruelty was a spark, one that ignited a fire burning with fierce injustice. That night, as she cleaned with silent fury, a plan seated itself deep inside her restless soul. Days later, fingers trembling, Francesca started to dig. What had Victor really done to build his empire? What dark cuts hid beneath the shine of his fortune? And then, shock after shock, she found tangled threads linking her own family's past to Victor's shadowy rise. Secrets so deep, they pulled at everything she thought she knew about herself. Francesca's thoughts twisted in a storm. Revenge was sweet, loud, proud, and simple. But now, caught between pain and revelation, she faced a question that gnawed at her resolve. Was tearing Victor down worth unraveling her own life? Could these hidden ties mean something more? Late one night, alone and breathless, she found it. A sealed envelope, shoved behind a false panel in Victor's private study, marked with her family's initials. Her hands shook violently as she pulled it out. The paper felt heavy, like it carried a prison sentence or a pardon. She stared down at it, the weight crushing her chest. Should she open it? Was this the key to justice or the threshold to destruction? Across the city, Victor sat blind to the storm brewing in his penthouse, unaware that their lives were about to collide in fire and shadows. Hey, before you continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. Francesca stared at the envelope, heart racing. The room around her blurred, reduced to a backdrop for the moment of truth. She took a deep breath, fingers shaking as she pressed on the sealed flap. What if this was the answer to everything? She felt the weight of generations pressing against her chest. The paper tore with a slight rip, and she unfolded it slowly, heart pounding in her ears. The writing inside was scrawled, familiar but foreign, her mother's hand. The words spilled out like a hidden truth waiting to be revealed. My dearest Francesca, if you're reading this, it means that Victor has finally crossed paths with our destiny. A chill shot through her. Destiny. She read on, eyes darting over the familiar loop of her mother's penmanship. Victor Hargrove didn't just take from us, he stole our lives, our future. Francesca's breath caught. What had Victor done? Her mind raced, her world tilting off its axis. The rich, polished life Victor led had roots in suffering and pain. The empire built on the backs of the vulnerable like her family. Then she read the words that shattered everything she thought she knew. Your father was Victor's partner in crime, literally. They were in business together when the accident happened. What accident? Francesca felt the room spin. She stumbled back against the wall, the revelation crashing over her like icy water. Her father, a man she had only lost to vague memories and whispered stories. There was more. You need to know the truth. Victor betrayed us in a deal gone wrong. He left your father to rot while he climbed to the top. This is the key to the justice we lost. Don't let his wealth blind you to what's right. Francesca's mind raced, trapped between rage and revelation. Was this why he was so cruel to her? Was he trying to bury the past? Suddenly, the door crashed open. Victor stood there, eyes blazing with anger. What the hell are you doing in here? Panic shot through her. She hid the envelope behind her back, heart racing. I was. He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. You shouldn't be in my study. Get out, wait. She took a step forward, voice shaking but resolute. You have to hear me out. I know about the past. Victor's hand shot out. You know nothing. Get out before I call security. No, she shouted, adrenaline surging. You can't run from this. You've been living a lie. His eyes shifted, a flicker of something, fear, guilt. But then it hardened again. You don't know what you're asking for. A shadow crossed his face, one she couldn't quite place. Had her accusation struck a nerve? There was more beneath the surface. Do we really want to dive into secrets? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The last person who tried to expose me, well, they're not around anymore. Francesca's heart raced as dread gripped her. The room felt suffocating, the silence thick and heavy. I'm not afraid of you. She forced her voice steady as she held out the envelope, her family's legacy. You have to face this, whatever it is. He froze, eyes locked on the envelope. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Then just like that, a sound shattered the tension. A loud crash echoed from the hallway and Victor's head snapped around. What the? The door flew open again, this time revealing a group of armed men. They stormed in, a whirlwind of chaos sweeping into the room. Victor's tension shattered instantly, his facade crumbling as he shouted, "What are you doing?" Francesca's breath caught in her throat. Confusion and fear twisted her gut. Who were these men? What did they want? Victor Hargrove, one of them shouted, finger pointing. You're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Everything dissolved into chaos. Victor's face twisted with shock, disbelief flooding his features. Francesca stood frozen, the envelope slipping from her fingers. All her plans for revenge, justice, truths, it didn't matter now. The real game had just begun. What had she stumbled into? This was more than just her pain. It was a tidal wave that threatened to swallow them all. Finding the truth was just the beginning. What price would they both have to pay? Francesca stood frozen, the envelope slipping from her fingers. All her plans for revenge, justice, and truths, it didn't matter now. The real game had just begun. In the chaos, Victor's face twisted with disbelief. The armed men stormed the room, shattering the walls of the bubble he had carefully curated. But as the men advanced, a low rumble filled the air, shaking the ground beneath their feet. It was a sound unlike anything any of them had heard before, a deep, ominous hum that rose in intensity. What's happening? One of the officers shouted, eyes darting around. His grip tightened on his weapon, nerves frayed. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. For a split second, everything went dark. Francesca's heart raced as shadows danced around her. She could barely breathe, the atmosphere thick with tension. When the lights came back on, there was a figure standing at the doorway, silhouetted against the harsh glow. "Stop right there." The voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. It was unfamiliar, but somehow it chilled Francesca to her core. The figure stepped forward, revealing a woman dressed in a sharp suit. Her expression was fierce, eyes locking on Victor with a deep, unsettling intensity. "Celia," Victor's voice trembled, the warmth of arrogance stripped away. "What are you doing here?" Celia's eyes narrowed and she raised a hand. "You thought you could just bury the past, Victor. Not when I'm around." Confusion flooded Francesca's mind. Who was Celia? Victor's former business partner, a rival. But before she could grasp the implications, she noticed something on the floor, an object that rolled near Victor's feet. It was a small black device, almost unnoticeable, but it pulsated ominously. Before anyone could react, Celia kicked the device with her heel. The floor vibrated violently, and a low, whirring sound filled the room. Francesca stumbled back, eyes wide. She felt the walls closing in around her. "Get down!" one of the officers shouted, but the urgency wasn't enough. In an instant, the device erupted in a blinding flash, engulfing the room in a cloud of smoke and confusion. Screams echoed, mingling with the chaos. Francesca couldn't see, couldn't breathe. She flailed, her limbs feeling heavy as fear took over. She could only hear voices screaming and scrambling around her. "Get out! Get out!" Victor's voice, laced with panic, cut through the din. Then silence. As the smoke began to clear, Francesca stumbled forward, gasping for air. The haze slowly lifted to reveal devastation. The officers lay scattered on the floor, dazed but alive. Victor was on his knees, shock and disbelief plastered across his face. But it was Celia who drew Francesca's attention. She stood, seemingly unscathed. The smirk creeping up her lips sent shivers down Francesca's spine. "Did you really think you could just control everything, Victor? You missed the pieces of your past that still haunt you," Celia taunted, stepping closer. "You should have known that secrets don't stay buried forever." Francesca's pulse quickened as uncertainty flooded her system again. What did Celia know? Was she an ally or another enemy? The air buzzed around them, thick with unspoken tension. The truth seemed to hang just out of reach, wrapped in layers of betrayal and revelation. Then, in a sudden turn of events, the lights went out once more. But this time it wasn't a flicker. It was a complete blackout. "You have to be kidding me!" Francesca yelled, feeling the panic meter rise again. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the penthouse, followed by what sounded like footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Were they coming for Victor? Coming for her? In the darkness, a fresh wave of fear washed over her as she realized one thought. What if this was just the beginning? Just who else was involved in this web of lies, and how deep did it go? A surge of dread coursed through her. Before she could digest it all, the sound of screams erupted again, bouncing off the walls, echoing in the chaos that had taken over. What had she really stumbled into? The truth felt closer than ever, yet it was engulfed in shadows. And she was caught right in the middle of it all, wrestling with the question that lingered in the air. Would she be strong enough to face the demons that awaited her? Francesca stood frozen, the envelope slipping from her fingers. All her plans for revenge, justice, and truths, it didn't matter now. The real game had just begun. In the chaos, Victor's face twisted with disbelief. The armed men stormed the room, shattering the walls of the bubble he had carefully curated. But as the men advanced, a low rumble filled the air, shaking the ground beneath them. It was a sound unlike anything they had heard before, a deep, ominous hum that rose in intensity. "What's happening?" one of the officers shouted, eyes darting around. His grip tightened on his weapon, nerves frayed. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. For a split second, everything went dark. Francesca's heart raced as shadows danced around her. She could barely breathe, the atmosphere thick with tension. When the lights came back on, there was a figure standing at the doorway, silhouetted against the harsh glow. "Stop right there!" The voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. It was unfamiliar but somehow chilled Francesca to her core. The figure stepped forward, revealing a woman dressed in a sharp suit. Her expression was fierce, eyes locking on Victor with an unsettling intensity. "Celia." Victor's voice trembled, the warmth of arrogance stripped away. "What are you doing here?" Celia's eyes narrowed and she raised a hand. You thought you could just bury the past, Victor, not when I'm around. Confusion flooded Francesca's mind. Who was Celia? Victor's former business partner, a rival. But before she could grasp the implications, she noticed something on the floor, an object that rolled near Victor's feet. It was a small black device, almost unnoticeable, but it pulsated ominously. Before anyone could react, Celia kicked the device with her heel. The floor vibrated violently and a low whirring sound filled the room. Francesca stumbled back, eyes wide. She felt the walls closing in around her. "Get down," one of the officers shouted. But the urgency wasn't enough. In an instant, the device erupted in a blinding flash, engulfing the room in a cloud of smoke and confusion. Screams echoed, mingling with the chaos. Francesca couldn't see, couldn't breathe. She flailed, her limbs feeling heavy as fear took over. She could only hear voices screaming and scrambling around her. "Get out! Get out!" Victor's voice, laced with panic, cut through the din. Then silence. As the smoke began to clear, Francesca stumbled forward, gasping for air. The haze slowly lifted to reveal devastation. The officers lay scattered on the floor, dazed but alive. Victor was on his knees, shock and disbelief plastered across his face. But it was Celia who drew Francesca's attention. She stood, seemingly unscathed. The smirk creeping up her lips sent shivers down Francesca's spine. "Did you really think you could just control everything, Victor? You missed the pieces of your past that still haunt you," Celia taunted, stepping closer. "You should have known that secrets don't stay buried forever." Francesca's pulse quickened as uncertainty flooded her system again. What did Celia know? Was she an ally or another enemy? The air buzzed around them, thick with unspoken tension. The truth seemed to hang just out of reach, wrapped in layers of betrayal and revelation. Then, in a sudden turn of events, the lights went out once more. But this time it wasn't a flicker. It was a complete blackout. "You have to be kidding me," Francesca yelled, feeling the panic meter rise again. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the penthouse, followed by what sounded like footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Were they coming for Victor? Coming for her? In the darkness, a fresh wave of fear washed over her as she realized one thought. What if this was just the beginning? Just who else was involved in this web of lies, and how deep did it go? A surge of dread coursed through her. Before she could digest it all, the sound of screams erupted again, bouncing off the walls, echoing in the chaos that had taken over. And then she heard it. A voice unmistakable. It cut through the darkness. "You think you can just expose him, Celia? You've always underestimated me." "What?" Francesca strained to make sense of it. It was a voice she recognized but had never expected to hear here. The room chilled. The very person she thought was an ally, perhaps the last hope to bring Victor down, was suddenly a new source of fear. "Rachel!" Celia shouted, even as the entire atmosphere shifted. As she stepped into the dim light, Francesca's breath caught in her throat. Rachel, her own sister, thought to be lost years ago, stood there, eyes fierce with contempt. "I'm here to finish the job Victor started." Rachel's voice was like ice, a twisted shadow of the sister Francesca once knew. She advanced, and with each step, Francesca felt the world twist further. Was Rachel part of all this? Had she been manipulating Francesca this whole time? "Rachel, no!" Francesca shouted, panic bubbling up. "Don't do this." But Rachel only smiled, a look without warmth. "It's too late for that, dear sister. You have no idea the kind of game we've been playing." Francesca's head spun. The layers of betrayal curled tightly around her like a noose, strangling every bit of hope. Everything she thought she understood was flipped upside down. What more secrets loomed in the dark? Could she trust anyone anymore? The question hung heavy in the air, waiting for a response that felt as distant as the truth itself. Francesca's heart raced as Rachel stood there, the weight of betrayal looming larger than ever. She felt the air thin around her, anxiety tightening her throat. "What are you doing here?" She managed to gasp, every word laced with confusion and fear. Rachel's smile was hollow, eyes glinting with something darker. "I thought you'd be proud. We're finally confronting Victor, aren't we? We. Francesca echoed, disbelief flickering across her face. You're with her, with Celia. Celia knows what's at stake, Rachel said, voice steady. Unlike you. Rachel, please. You can't trust her, Francesca pleaded, desperate to reach her sister. She wanted to shake her, to break through the fog clouding her judgment. Whatever's happening, it's not worth it. Rachel let out a sharp laugh, ringing with disdain. You don't get it. It's a game, Francesca, and you've been playing it wrong. Before she could react, Rachel lunged forward, her hand grasping Francesca's wrist. Francesca flinched, fire blooming in her skin from the sharp grip. Let go of me, but Rachel didn't loosen her hold. Instead, she leaned in closer, a sinister whisper against Francesca's ear. You have no idea what Victor is capable of, or what we've tried to keep him from. This has to end now. Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment, Francesca thought she saw something, the pain of a sister torn between loyalty and resolve. But then it vanished, swallowed by rage. Francesca's breath caught as she realized just how tangled they were in Victor's web. What do you mean, we? Are you really willing to do this? Francesca felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The room seemed to shift. Another loud crash echoed from the hallway, and the distant sound of sirens wailed through the air. Celia's attention snapped back to the door, her expression one of surprise layered with concern. Victor's history is catching up to him, and he's not the only one who has secrets, Celia muttered, stepping toward the doorway as if to assess the situation. Her back turned. A flicker of tension rippled through Francesca. Suddenly, Rachel pulled back. No more wasted time, she snapped, raising her voice. I won't let Victor win, not again. And just as Francesca felt the ground shift beneath her feet again, a loud explosion erupted from the hallway, shaking the walls. The floor jolted, and for a split second everything froze. Desks toppled over, glass shattered, the chaos capturing everyone in its grip. Francesca hit the ground hard, breath knocked out of her lungs. She blinked, everything a swirl of confusion and debris. Panic surged as she looked around, struggling to find Rachel. Francesca, Rachel shouted, voice lost in the chaos. Victor's anguished scream pierced through the noise. What the hell is happening? Through the dust and smoke she saw him. He was backed against the wall, terror painting his face paler than she'd ever seen it. But it was more than fear. It was a raw desperation that shook her. Maybe he was more human than she thought. In a whirlwind, Rachel dashed toward Victor. We're not finished yet, she yelled, her voice bubbling with a mix of anger and thrill. Suddenly, Francesca felt a sharp pang of betrayal. Rachel, no. Francesca cried, scrambling to her feet, but it was too late. With a deft motion, Rachel pulled something from her pocket. Francesca's stomach dropped. A gun? Was this a part of their plan? Stop! Francesca shouted, her heart racing as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Rachel smiled, but it was the kind of smile that signaled disaster. You don't understand. This is the only way to break the cycle. And then, time slowed as reality shifted. Without warning, a deafening shot rang out, echoing off the walls like a horrifying anthem. Francesca froze, her heart stopping. The sound shattered every illusion she held about family and loyalty. The chaos around her blurred, a moment suspended in time. Her eyes darted to Victor, who had dropped to the floor, eyes wide, shock dancing across his features as he grasped at his side. Everything turned cold. Francesca staggered, mind racing with disbelief. Rachel, her sister, had crossed a line she couldn't understand. An invisible barrier of safety shattered and reality crashed hard. Rachel, what have you done? Francesca choked out, feet numb to the ground. Everything she thought she knew twisted anew, spiraling into a dark void. Victor, Rachel, the past. Secrets now spilled into the room like blood on the polished floor. What were the real connections they all shared? And as she stared into Rachel's blank eyes, the question reverberated in Francesca's mind. What if Victor wasn't the only monster in the room? Francesca's breath hitched in her throat, the echoing gunshot hanging in the air. Rachel stood rigid, trembling slightly as Victor clutched his side, shock morphing into terror. That emptiness in Rachel's gaze made Francesca's heart race. Betrayal sliced through the chaos. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice shaking. This wasn't just about Victor anymore. Rachel had chosen a path that could ruin them both. Francesca took a hesitant step forward, her instincts screaming for her sister to reconsider. "You can't do this." But Rachel didn't flinch. Instead, she shoved the gun back into her pocket, eyes dark and determined. "You don't see the bigger picture, Francesca. He's the cause of all our pain." In the distance, sirens grew louder, merging with the chaos. Francesca could feel the tension thickening like fog around them. She glanced at Victor. Was there darkness hidden behind his former bravado? Suddenly, the realization hit her. The truth was more complicated than she could ever imagine. Victor struggled to catch his breath, eyes darting between Francesca and Rachel, his expression a mix of hurt and anger. "You think this will change anything?" he rasped, voice strained. "You don't know what you're getting into." Francesca's heart clenched at his desperation. Was he really a monster or just a man haunted by his past mistakes? The air was charged, and with every passing second the reality of the situation crystallized. Then, out of nowhere, a loud bang resonated from the hallway, startling everyone. A figure burst through the door, gasping and wide-eyed. "Get down. Now!" It was a man in a uniform, but he wasn't with the police. He was wearing a tactical vest, gun drawn, eyes wild. "We've got trouble," he shouted, urgency in his voice. "Evacuate now, it's not safe." Francesca's pulse quickened. Trouble, what was happening outside? Before anyone could react, the sound of a distant explosion shook the building. The walls trembled and dust filled the air, causing Francesca to cough. It was like a scene from a nightmare. Rachel grabbed her arm. "We have to go now." But Francesca's mind raced. "No, we need answers. Victor, what's going on?" She couldn't let fear dictate her actions any longer. Not now. Victor's eyes widened. I didn't think they'd find us here." His voice cracked, panic flowing through him. Francesca noticed a flicker of vulnerability in his despair. The monster was afraid. "Who's they?" Rachel asked, her firm grip on Francesca's arm tightening. "We can't stay. We need to get out." But before another word could escape, the lights flickered violently, then went out completely. A wave of darkness enveloped them, engulfing every scrap of sanity left in the chaotic whirlpool of fear. Heart pounding, Francesca fumbled for Rachel's hand. The panic seeped into her bones. In the chaos, Francesca heard the men in uniforms barking orders, shouting for everyone to move. The gunfire rang out around them, chaotic, unforeseen. Francesca's heart raced. Should they flee? She needed to know why her sister was acting this way. She needed the truth. Then, without warning, everything exploded. A blinding flash lit up the hallway, followed by an ear-splitting sound. Francesca covered her ears, falling to the ground in horror. The room vibrated with screams, explosive chaos blanketing their minds. As the dust settled, and the first moments of silence enveloped them, Francesca watched in disbelief as Rachel's expression altered. Gone was the fiery determination. Instead, confusion played across her features, mingling with horror. What the hell? And then it happened. A realization surged through Rachel's eyes, a flicker of unexpected recognition. No, it can't be. Victor, now barely holding on, coughed in disbelief, finally pointing toward her. "You're involved in this, aren't you?" Francesca's world tilted. What do you mean?" But the impact of his words barely settled before Rachel responded. "You didn't. You never told me, Victor. You promised." Francesca's stomach dropped. Promised? What had they promised? It was then Francesca felt the weight of the envelope slip out of her pocket, its secrets now more potent than ever. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. No one knew where to turn. Could there be even more hidden truths than they ever realized? A connection more twisted than she could have thought. Chaos would soon come to claim them, and the end was only the beginning. But in the center of it all, a question loomed. What dark bond had they all been tied to for so long? Would the answer shatter everything? Francesca's breath quickened. the magnitude of Rachel's actions washing over her like a bucket of cold water. The room was filled with tension, each second stretching painfully. The air thickened as the adrenaline surged, nearly suffocating in its intensity. "What have you done?" It felt like she was screaming into a void. Rachel's face twisted, fury mixing with uncertainty. "I did what I had to. He's the reason we've suffered." Victor struggled on the floor, eyes wide, disbelief etched across his features. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining the carpet. "You don't even know the truth," he gasped, words laced with desperation. And then it happened. A loud crash echoed from the end of the hall, different from before. It wasn't just chaos, it was deliberate. Francesca shot her eyes toward the door, heart racing. Shadows danced, and then they saw it. A group of masked figures stormed into the room, hustling in like soldiers invading a war zone. "Get down!" one of them yelled, weapons raised. Francesca's mind spiraled. What was going on? Who were they? Amid the chaos, Rachel seemed frozen, eyes darting with panic. The blood drained from her face as the masked figures focused on Victor, closing in quickly. "No, get away from him!" Francesca screamed, adrenaline kicking in as protective instincts surged. But just as quickly as they came in, the figures grabbed Victor, pulling him away from the ground as if he weighed nothing. He yelled in pain, the sound merging with Francesca's heart racing in her ears. "Help!" was all she could gasp. In a flash they had him, dragging him toward the door. She lunged forward, desperate to catch him. "Victor!" But her hand grasped empty air. Suddenly Rachel shouted, "No!" her voice trembling with anger and fear. Too late. They were gone, just like that. A whirlwind of confusion swallowed them whole. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself was gasping in shock. "What just happened?" Francesca whispered, a chill settling into her bones. Around her, the remaining officers scrambled to regain control, eyes wide with shock. But it wasn't until she turned back to Rachel that everything shattered anew. Rachel stood there, trembling, looking far smaller than before. "I didn't know," her voice drifted off, eyes shimmering with tears. "I thought we could end it." "End what?" Francesca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt dizzy, overwhelmed. "What are you talking about?" Just then, another figure entered, one Francesca had seen before but never really registered. It was Celia, stepping into the light, a knowing smile stretching across her lips. "Well done, Rachel, you played your part perfectly." Francesca's heart plummeted. "What do you mean?" she demanded, stepping forward. "What's going on?" Celia chuckled softly, almost mockingly. "Didn't you realize? This isn't just about Victor. It never was." The room felt colder as those words hung in the air. Francesca's mind raced. "What are you saying?" Rachel took a step back, voice trembling. "Victor was just a pawn. We've been after something bigger." Suddenly, Francesca felt the world shift dramatically under her feet. She caught a glimpse of a familiar face among the masked figures as they dragged Victor away. Someone she never expected to see, someone she thought was neatly tucked away in the past. "Michael!" she breathed, disbelief coursing through her. It was Victor's brother, a figure that had disappeared long ago, swallowed by scandal and whispers. "Time to finish this," he said, his voice filled with dark satisfaction. Francesca's world tilted. Everything she thought she understood shattered. Victor's empire, Rachel's hatred, Celia's ambition. Was it all part of a larger plan? What darkness had lingered just beneath the surface all along, pulling the strings? As the reality coiled around her like a serpent, a question lingered in the air. What lay ahead now that the game was changing? Would they even make it out alive? Francesca's mind spun, each second stretching on as Rachel stood before her, processing the chaos unfolding. The air crackled with tension, shadows clinging to the corners of the room. She could hardly breathe. "What's going on, Rachel? You need to tell me now." But Rachel just stared at the doorway where the masked figures had dragged Victor away. "We've come too far. We can't turn back now," she whispered, her determination faltering. Celia's laughter shot through the thick air, icy and sharp. "You still don't get it. This isn't just about revenge, it's about survival." Francesca shivered. It felt as if the room had closed in around her. No. Rachel snapped, spinning towards Celia, anger flaring anew. I won't let him get away with what he did to us. Again came the sound of gunfire from the hallway. Each shot was a reminder of the chaos that threatened to close in around them. Francesca's heart raced. They had to act. They had to find out what Victor had meant when he talked about secrets. Wait, Francesca urged, pushing past the fear rising in her throat. We need answers, not more violence. Celia's gaze bored into her, calculating. You want answers, fine, but just know once you hear them there's no going back. Rachel clutched Francesca's arm. It's already too late to go back. But there was something in her tone, a glimmer of uncertainty. More explosions sounded, closer this time. Francesca felt the rush of fear swallow her whole. Victor knows things, secrets that could set everything straight. We should find him. Just then, the air seemed to pulse, filled with an energy that made Francesca's skin prickle. The lights flickered ominously, then went out again, plunging them into darkness. In that moment everything felt surreal, the shadows creeping closer. Suddenly, as if propelled by an unseen force, the door flew open again. But this time it wasn't a masked figure or an officer coming through. It was a flash, a blinding light that momentarily swallowed the room. Francesca shielded her eyes. What the? Then, in the glaring brightness, voices mingled and surged. Forget us. A male voice shouted, barely heard above the cacophony. We need to get him out. Who are you? Francesca yelled, panic twisting her insides as the glow began to fade. As the light diminished, Francesca caught the glimpse of two figures in tactical gear rushing in with urgency. But they weren't there to fight. They were pulling someone along with them, Victor. What? Her heart jumped. Anxiety flipped in her stomach. Celia's face changed in an instant. No, you can't take him, she shouted, rushing toward them, but it was too late. The men held Victor firmly and something clicked in Francesca's mind. They weren't there to save him. They were here to take him, not just from her but from everyone. Victor's eyes, filled with fear and clarity, darted between them. No, you don't understand. You can't let them. Shut up. One of the figures snapped, pulling Victor away. We have to go. Francesca moved instinctively, shouting, Wait, what do you mean? Why are you taking him? Victor's despair washed over her like a wave. They work for the very people trying to destroy everything we built. Then, the truth hit her like a punch in the gut. You lied to us, Victor. He locked eyes with her, desperation flooding his voice. No, you need to know the truth. It's worse than you think. Before she could process it, a deafening sound swept through the air, an explosion, this time from outside. It rocked the entire building, sending everyone sprawling to the ground. Francesca scrambled to her feet, heart racing. As the dust began to settle, she found herself staring at Rachel, whose expression had morphed into shock. What is it, Rachel? But the words fled. Suddenly, a high-pitched beeping echoed through the air. Francesca looked around in confusion until her gaze fell on the device near Victor. What is that? Victor's eyes widened. No, they set this up. We have to leave now. But just as they turned to run, everything crumbled. The room shook violently as the walls began to crack. Was it the explosion, or something darker? Celia screamed, but Francesca's eyes were drawn to Rachel, who stood frozen, face pale. Rachel, she shouted, but her sister was not there anymore. The surface of reality felt thin. What's happening? Francesca shouted, panic rising again. What did you know? Rachel turned slowly, eyes wide, shock etched in every line of her face. For a split second, Francesca thought she saw betrayal shine in her sister's eyes. But then a final explosion erupted, spiraling into chaos. Darkness engulfed them all, and in that darkness, a whisper echoed through the void. You'll wish you'd never known the truth. In that moment, Francesca knew they were all caught in something so much bigger than themselves. What had they stumbled into? And how deep did the lies run? Francesca's heart raced, the echo of the gunshot still ringing in her ears. Darkness engulfed them as the building trembled, leaving the aftermath of fear thick and suffocating. She stood frozen, staring at Rachel's pale face, trying to process the gravity of the moment. The world felt unreal, like a nightmare pulled from the depths of her own fears. Celia's laughter, biting and cold, sliced through the tension. "You really thought you could outrun the truth?" Her voice echoed like the crack of thunder, linking them all together in this tangled web of betrayal. Just as Francesca took a step forward, the lights flickered back on. Broken bits of chaos blurred her vision. Shadows danced awkwardly, but there was something more, something shifting behind the scenes. "Rachel, we can fix this," Francesca urged, but Rachel's eyes held a darkness she barely recognized. "You need to listen." But Rachel shook her head, hands trembling as they tightened into fists. "You don't know what you're asking. You've always been naive." Francesca pushed through her own fear, anger mixing with desperation. "Naive? You're the one with blood on your hands." The room quaked again, this time from more than just outside explosions. A shockwave swept through, rattling the windows. Francesca had to act before everything crumbled, before they lost Victor forever. She turned to Celia. "What do you know?" Before Celia could respond, a loud crash erupted from the back of the room. A body slammed against the wall. Francesca whipped around, gut twisting in panic, and saw Victor struggling in the grip of one of the masked men. "Get away from him!" Francesca shouted, lunging forward. But then it happened. Out of the shadows, another figure appeared, moving with an authority that momentarily quelled the chaos. It was a woman, clad in black, with sharp features that screamed danger. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her gaze piercing through the confusion. "Enough," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Francesca blinked, recognition hitting her harder than any blow. Anna. The world around her stilled. Anna was Victor's estranged sister, a name that had been whispered in the dark corners of their family but long thought buried with secrets. Everyone believed she disappeared because of him. But here she was, alive and commanding. "Release Victor," Anna demanded, stepping forward. The air shifted, tension thickening like an anchored weight. Rachel glanced between them, confusion painted across her face. You shouldn't be here." Her voice shook, a mixture of fear and realization. Anna's eyes hardened. "You don't understand the stakes. This is bigger than Victor, bigger than all of us." Francesca felt the room closing in. "What do you mean?" The question hung like a heavy fog of uncertainty. But before Anna could answer, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She pulled it out, eyes widening as she read the message. "They're onto us. We have to move now." Suddenly, the lights flickered again, this time a series of rapid bursts, flashing like a frantic Morse code. A dreadful sense of urgency crashed down on her. And then Francesca saw it, a hidden door opening behind Anna, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into shadows. "We can't," Francesca began, but Anna interrupted. "There's no time. You want the truth? Come now or it all ends here." Victor groaned weakly, still fighting against the masked figure's grip. "We need to stay together." But the question echoed in the depths of Francesca's mind. What had Anna uncovered? Then, just as the reality set in, the ground shook violently beneath them. The masked figures began to retreat, pulling Victor with them, but Francesca wouldn't let him go. "I won't leave you." A flash of light flared from the doorway, illuminating Anna's face, tension painted in sharp lines. "Francesca, if you want to save him, you have to choose. You'll never be the same. Once you know, there's no turning back." The urgency clawed at her insides. Layers of secrets peeled back with every heartbeat. And then, before she could respond, a deafening explosion erupted outside, rocking the entire building. The force of it ripped through the walls. Screams mingled with the sound of falling debris, and everything collapsed into chaos. In that moment, as Francesca felt herself being pushed toward the exit, she realized what Anna hadn't said. Could it be possible that she wasn't just a brother's victim? What if Anna held the true key to secrets darker than they could have ever imagined? The weight of those questions crashed upon her as she stepped through the door, leaving behind the world she thought she knew. And deep down, she sensed she might be stepping into something unthinkably darker, Would she regret it? Would they all be forever changed? Only time would tell. Francesca gasped as the dust settled, fear coursing through her veins. Anna stood firm, her commanding presence cutting through the chaos. The walls trembled, debris scattered across the floor, and the distant sounds of destruction echoed like an ominous symphony. This was it, the moment where everything would change. "Francesca, we need to move," Anna shouted, urgency etched across her face. She glanced back to where Victor had been dragged away, worry etched deep in her eyes. "Wait," Francesca cried, her heart racing. "We can't just leave him." Rachel shuffled backward, panic replacing her earlier bravado. "What if they find us? Are we just going to stand here and wait for the worst?" Anna didn't waver, her expression fierce. "If we leave now, we can follow them. Understand me, he's not safe." Francesca felt a lump forming in her throat. "But what about the truth? We deserve to know what's really going on." "They'll speak when we take them down," Anna said, steel in her voice. "Time is running out." The air thickened with tension and the shadows seemed to close in. Francesca caught a glimpse of Victor, fighting against his captors, anguished cries echoing in her mind. He was so close, but the danger was real. "We have to save him," she shouted again, desperation creeping in. Anna turned, eyes burning with purpose. "We make our move now together. Stay close." Without another moment to lose, they dashed through the wreckage, adrenaline flooding their steps. Francesca felt her heartbeat thrumming against her chest like a war drum, guiding her forward. They reached the hidden door and descended the staircase into darkness. The air was damp and cool, the silence weighing down like a heavy shroud. Footsteps echoed behind them, a cacophony of voices rising and falling. "Don't stop, keep moving," Anna urged, gripping Francesca's arm tightly. As they reached the bottom, the faint glow of light spilled into a hallway lined with steel doors. A siren wailed in the distance, merging with the pounding of Francesca's heart. They had arrived at the heart of the danger, the truth pulling them like a magnet. "Over there," Rachel pointed to a door slightly ajar. The tension surged as they slipped inside, breathless. Inside, the room was dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. And there, tied to a chair, was Victor, bruised but alive. His face, usually confident, now wore a mask of vulnerability. Anger flared within Francesca. This was the man who had dismissed her dreams, but he was also a victim. "Francesca, Rachel," Victor looked up, his voice a strained whisper. "You shouldn't be here, it's a trap." But Anna stepped forward, determination radiating. "It's too late for that, Victor. We're all entangled in this mess." Suddenly, the door slammed open, the masked figures flooding in once more, weapons drawn. The tension snapped like a rubber band. "Get away from him," Anna yelled, instinctively stepping in front of Victor. Panic surged. Francesca's heart raced as she grabbed a nearby metal pipe. "We can't let them take him again." The masked figures hesitated, startled by the sudden defiance. "You think you can stop us?" One of them barked, but the conviction was wavering. "Maybe we don't need to," Rachel whispered, wide-eyed. "What if we use the chaos to our advantage?" At that moment, another explosion echoed outside. The ground shook and Francesca felt a sudden wave of hope. "Now, let's go," she shouted, charging forward. Chaos erupted as the group moved. Francesca swung the pipe, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. Rachel and Anna dove in behind her. They fought fiercely, pushing back against the masked figures until one stumbled and crashed into a wall. Heart thumping, Francesca pushed forward, adrenaline fueling her every move. Victor shouted, "Keep going, don't stop." With a burst of strength, they freed Victor, untying him from the chair. Together, they fought their way toward the exit, the sounds of the outside world calling them back to freedom. Finally, they burst through the doors and into the daylight. Fresh air rushed over them, and Francesca suddenly felt a flicker of hope. They were outside, but the battle wasn't over. There was a long way to go, and the truth lay ahead. As they looked at each other, battered but alive, there was a moment of unity, a moment that bound them together, as thick as blood. But the next question loomed large in her mind. How would they confront the horrors that awaited them? And as they sprinted into the unknown, she couldn't help but wonder, would the truth bring them closer together, or would it finally tear them apart? Now, listen closely. If you enjoyed this wild ride, you must subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that are coming. Click the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep this channel thriving. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait another second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know how it ends. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel with these actions. Do it now.